At dawn on July 10, 1945, Argentine fishermen off the naval base at Mar del Plata saw an unexpected silhouette emerge in the distance. A large U-boat running on the surface suddenly appeared, heading toward the harbour entrance. This would be U-530 of the German Kriegsmarine, arriving unannounced 2 months after World War II had ended in Europe. The vessel's surprise appearance so long after VE Day would spark international headlines, official investigations, and a lasting legend of a final secret mission. This is the story of U-530, the U-boat that escaped to Argentina. U-530 was a Type 9C U-boat, a long-range design meant for extended patrols far from home ports. Measuring about 251 feet in length and displacing over 1,100 tons surfaced, it carried 6 torpedo tubes, 4 forward, 2 aft, and up to 22 torpedoes. Earlier in the war, its class was equipped with a 10.5 centimeter deck gun for surface combat, though many U-boats had these removed later in the war. U-530's conning tower also mounted anti-aircraft guns and carried a Hohentwiel radar transmitter for detecting enemy ships or aircraft. With powerful diesel engines and a new snorkel device, U-530 could travel 13,000 plus nautical miles and even run submerged for extended periods, ideal for stealthy operations across the Atlantic. The submarine's crew normally numbered about 44 to 54 officers and enlisted men. U-530's wartime service had been eventful. Under a previous captain, it conducted 6 combat patrols, sinking 2 Allied merchant ships and damaging another. In January 1945, command passed to Oberleutnant Otto Wermuth, a 24-year-old veteran U-boat officer. It was Wermuth's first command, and he was eager to prove himself. He assumed command of U-530 just as Nazi Germany was teetering on collapse. Wermuth and his crew would soon find themselves on one of the most bizarre voyages in World War II. U-530's fateful final mission began in the last weeks of World War II. On March 3, 1945, Wermuth departed the U-boat base at Horten, Norway, with orders to disrupt Allied shipping in the Western Atlantic. After a covert transit around the British Isles, mostly submerged to avoid overwhelming Allied air patrols, U-530 reached the waters off North America by late April. Initially assigned to hunt convoys near Halifax, Canada, Wermuth found few targets and decided to head south toward the busy sea lanes off New York. There, in the first week of May 1945, U-530 made several fruitless attacks on Allied ships. From May 4th to 7th, the U-boat fired 9 torpedoes at convoys near the New York coast, but all either missed their targets or malfunctioned. These would be the last shots U-530 ever fired in combat. On May 8th, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally, ending the war in Europe. At that moment, U-530 was cruising in the mid-Atlantic, roughly 1,000 miles east of Puerto Rico. Admiral Karl Dönitz, Hitler's successor, had ordered all U-boats to cease hostilities and surrender at the nearest Allied port. For U-boat crews, this directive, transmitted with top priority, meant the war was over. Dozens of submarines surfaced and gave themselves up in May, while others scuttled themselves under the last-ditch Operation Regenbogen plan rather than be captured. Oberleutnant Wermuth, however, made a fateful choice. According to his later testimony, he doubted the surrender message was genuine and feared it might be an Allied trick. Instead of reporting to an Allied port, Wermuth decided to flee. Believing his men might receive better treatment in a far-off country, he set course for neutral Argentina, not realizing that Argentina had quietly declared war on Germany only weeks earlier. Wermuth ordered the crew to cease all offensive operations, and prepared for a long, clandestine voyage. The submarine stayed submerged during daylight hours, using its snorkel to run the diesel engines and recharge batteries while hiding just below the surface. By night, U-530 would cautiously surface to make better speed in the open ocean. Every precaution was taken to avoid drawing attention. The crew even refrained from using their radio except for routine weather reports. They navigated a circuitous route, passing east of Bermuda and crossing the equator in mid-June 1945 under the cover of darkness. In accordance with Dönitz's standing instructions, Wehrmacht also began dumping anything that might be of value to Allied intelligence or pose a hazard during surrender. Overboard went their remaining torpedoes, minus one whose battery had exploded, the broken torpedo warhead and gyroscope, all coded signal books and the ship's logbook, and even the boat's anti-aircraft ammunition and radar equipment. U-530 was shedding weight and secrets as it crept towards South America. By late June 1945, the U-boat had entered the South Atlantic, running low on provisions but still undetected. Initially, Wehrmacht considered surrendering at Miramar near Buenos Aires, but ultimately chose Mar del Plata as the most suitable. On the night of July 9, 1945, U-530 approached the coast of Argentina. After more than 70 days at sea since the German surrender, Wehrmacht's crew prepared to give themselves up at last. The U-boat surfaced off Mar del Plata and cautiously inched toward the harbour, running on the surface under cover of darkness. The long journey was almost over, but the real mystery of U-530 was just beginning. Just before sunrise on July 10, 1945, U-530 made its move. The German submarine's crew hoisted a large white flag and turned on their navigation lights as they neared Mar del Plata's harbour entrance. The sudden appearance of a U-boat took the Argentine defenders by surprise. One account notes the sub slipped past a sentry who had his back turned to the sea. Once inside the port, Wehrmacht blinked the word Aleman Submarino, German submarine, by signal lamp, indicating his intention to surrender peacefully. Argentine naval personnel quickly mustered and surrounded the U-boat. U-530 formally surrendered to the Argentine Navy on the morning of July 10, 1945, ending its odyssey. All 54 crewmen were brought ashore, given hot food and even haircuts, then promptly placed under guard. The U-boat that had roamed the Atlantic was now a prized captive, docked at Argentina's main naval base. The immediate question was, where had U-530 come from, and why now? When interrogated by Argentine officers, Oberleutnant Wehrmacht offered only a sketchy story. He admitted that on VE Day, May 8th, his submarine was operating in the North Atlantic, and that he had decided to sail for Argentina to surrender there. However, Wehrmacht could not satisfactorily explain why the voyage had taken over 2 months, when a direct trip should have been possible in a few weeks. Suspicion grew when the Argentines discovered that U-530 had arrived without its logbook, without any torpedoes or deck gun, and with the crew carrying no personal identification papers at all. Wehrmacht claimed he had scuttled the log and secret materials at sea, as well as the unused munitions, but his vague answers about the U-boat's route and activities did little to ease speculation. To make matters worse, he initially lied that the submarine's engines were malfunctioning, only later confessing that he had deliberately sabotaged the diesel motors before entering port, pouring acid into them, to ensure the U-boat could not be easily reused. Such actions suggested Wehrmacht was hiding something about U-530's final mission. News of the U-boat's mysterious surrender spread quickly, reaching Allied authorities and neighbouring countries. Within days, Argentina, which had only declared war on Germany in March 1945, found itself under intense international scrutiny over U-530. The Argentine Navy moved the crew to an inland detention camp and agreed to hand the submarine over to the United States in the spirit of Allied cooperation. US and Argentine intelligence officers subjected Wehrmacht and his men to extensive interrogation. Repeatedly, the Germans denied carrying any passengers, fugitives, or valuable cargo. Wehrmacht insisted that, at no time during the voyage had the U-530 carried aboard any passengers of any nationality, civilian or military. To skeptics, these denials were expected. If U-530 had secret passengers or cargo, the crew would hardly confess it. The lack of a logbook or clear timeline only fueled suspicions. Despite Wehrmacht's evasiveness about the U-boat's exact route and 2-month delay, no concrete evidence of wrongdoing was immediately found. The Argentine Navy's official communiqué, issued soon after, emphasized that no high-ranking Nazi officials were aboard U-530, no one had been landed on Argentine shores, and the submarine had not been involved in any hostile acts like the recent sinking of the Brazilian cruiser Bahia. In short, Argentina publicly declared U-530's surrender to be routine, but in private, many wondered if there was more to the story. U-530's unexplained voyage set off a storm of rumours and conspiracy theories that linger to this day. In July 1945, the regional press and some Allied officials openly speculated about sensational possibilities. One theory posited that U-530 had made a clandestine detour to spirit away Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun to safety. An Argentine reporter claimed to have seen a police report describing a mysterious U-boat landing on the remote coast of Patagonia, unloading a high-ranking officer and a civilian, supposedly Hitler and his wife disguised in men's clothing. Around the same time, the FBI in the United States received unconfirmed reports that a German submarine had put ashore in southern Argentina or elsewhere in May 1945 with Hitler aboard. These dramatic allegations captured headlines, despite the lack of any hard evidence. U-530 was also accused by a Brazilian admiral of torpedoing the cruiser Bahia on July 4, 1945, since the sub's presence in the South Atlantic roughly coincided with that tragedy. Another Brazilian naval officer speculated that U-530 might even have come all the way from Japan, suggesting some last-gasp Axis collaboration. The fact that U-977, another German U-boat, arrived in Argentina 5 weeks later, surrendering on August 17, 1945, only added fuel to the conspiracy fire. If 2 U-boats showed up in Argentina, some wondered, could they have been on secret missions to deliver Nazi leaders, war loot, or advanced technology to a safe haven? In reality, most of these theories have been debunked or remain unsupported by evidence. A post-war Brazilian inquiry conclusively determined that Bahia was sunk by an accidental onboard explosion during gunnery drills, not by any submarine attack. No credible proof ever emerged linking U-530 to Hitler's escape. Exhaustive Allied investigations concluded with virtually no doubt that Hitler died in his bunker in May 1945. Likewise, while many Nazi officials did flee to Argentina, most arriving by air or through other routes in the years after the war, there is no confirmed record of U-530 transporting anyone or anything. Allied naval intelligence reports from 1945 note that U-530's crew all consistently denied any passengers or special cargo, and the physical inspection of the boat revealed no secret compartments beyond normal storage. U-977's captain, who was interrogated separately, also maintained that his U-boat had no connection to U-530's voyage. While it is understandable why the unexplained delay and missing log fueled imagination, historians generally conclude that U-530's late surrender was an act of rogue obedience and self-preservation, not a Hollywood-style Nazi escape plot. Wehrmacht likely destroyed the log and weaponry to cover up his defiance of orders and to prevent any possible incrimination of his crew. In the end, the legend of U-530 has outlived its reality, a reminder of how mystery can breed speculation. The incident did, however, prompt Allied agencies to keep a close watch on post-war Nazi movements, and it contributed to Argentina's reputation as a haven for fugitive Nazis, albeit mostly via different means. After the surrender, U-530's crew spent several weeks under Argentine custody before being handed over to the United States for further interrogation. In August 1945, the US Navy took possession of U-530 as a war prize, part of a program to study captured German technology. The submarine, along with the later arriving U-977, was towed to the Panama Canal and then up to the east coast of the US. That autumn, U-530 briefly toured a few American port cities, a public exhibit of a defeated U-boat, before the Navy decided it had outlived its usefulness. The men of U-530 were eventually repatriated to Germany in 1947 after 2 years as POWs. Oberleutnant Wehrmuth himself survived the war and lived into old age, although details of his later life are sparse. In the end, no crew members were charged with wrongdoing beyond failing to follow the original surrender order. The final fate of U-530 came in late 1947, when the US Navy selected the submarine for destruction as a target. On November 20th, 1947, off the coast of Cape Cod, the American submarine USS Toro lined up U-530 in its periscope and fired a live torpedo. The weapon struck U-530 amidships, blowing the U-boat in two and sending it to the bottom of the Atlantic in a fiery plume of water and debris. What had begun as a stealthy commerce raider for the Kriegsmarine ended as scrap metal on the ocean floor off Massachusetts, a quiet conclusion to a voyage shrouded in mystery. U-530's strange journey left a legacy disproportionate to its modest wartime record. In Argentina, the U-boat's arrival in 1945 became part of the folklore of the immediate post-war era, reinforcing suspicions about Nazi activities in South America. The incident did push Argentine authorities to demonstrate cooperation with the Allies, as seen by their swift transfer of the sub and crew to US custody. Internationally, U-530 and the later U-977 served as stark evidence that not every enemy unit surrendered exactly when and where expected. A few stragglers charted their own course in the chaotic final days of World War II. U-530 remains an intriguing case study of Operation Regenbogen's aftermath and the psyche of U-boat crews facing defeat. The mystery of U-530 continues to fascinate, a real-world footnote where fact and legend have often intertwined. While conspiracy theorists have woven elaborate tales around U-530's final mission, the consensus of historical evidence is far more grounded. The U-boat's 2-month disappearance was likely spent hiding from Allied retribution, not smuggling Hitler to a Patagonian hideout. Yet the very lack of a definitive log or full disclosure from Wehrmuth means U-530's story retains several unanswered questions. In the end, this lone submarine surrender in a distant port encapsulates the tumultuous end of World War II. U-530's voyage to Argentina has secured its place as one of naval history's strangest final missions ever recorded.